The very first episode of season 31 of The Ultimate Fighter has finally dropped. Whilst we still don't know when coaches Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler will fight, or if they will fight at all. I know that it's been signed, but you know what I mean. We have the first episode to dive into. So I just thought I would do a quick little reaction video, talk about my initial thoughts of the first episode. The first thing to point out, as someone who has watched every season of The Ultimate Fighter, I think pretty much, there might be a couple that I haven't watched every episode, but for the most part, even the new ones, yes, I have sat through those as well. It just hasn't changed still, has it? I remember when they brought Tough back, I think it was the Volk versus Ortega series, and it was like, you haven't changed anything, it's just the Apex now, which doesn't change anything, and it still feels exactly the same. If you have watched a season of The Ultimate Fighter before, then I'm sure watching this felt predictable to you in terms of the pacing of the episodes, in terms of the format. Like, they follow the exact same formula over and over. Like, this episode will be pretty much the same as every other episode, but they will be more focused on the fights. Of course, this one was a bit more of an introduction to the teams and the coaches and things like that. I will say the production value seems to have been upped in certain places, probably because of Conor. You know, the promo packages and things like that are a little bit more just a little bit more money and time put into them, I suppose. Speaking of Conor, I'm sure this will be a lot of people's first take from this, and if you've watched anything to do with Conor recently, I'm sure you will agree, but still worth pointing out, because every time I see him, I'm like, Jesus Christ, he looks huge. Not in a overweight way, he looks like a middleweight. He even makes a joke towards the start of the episode about how Chandler will do what he's told, and that they could make the fight at 185, and Chandler's like, oh, I'd be up for that, and Conor's like, well, you'll do what you're told. So it legitimately looks like he could fight at 185 when they filmed that show, and from seeing recent clips of him, it doesn't look like he's lost any weight. He looks about the same size. That being said, Conor's enthusiasm and passion, I think, is a big part of this episode. I have long complained that the Tough format doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, for multiple reasons that I've already talked about in previous videos, so I won't go into it now, and I'm sure everyone knows them anyway. But the coaches have also been one of the reasons why I think Tough hasn't been as entertaining as it could have been in recent series. But Conor and Chandler should change that, mostly because of Conor. I do like Michael Chandler, and I'm sure he will be a great coach, but people are tuning in to see Conor, aren't they, and see what crazy stuff he gets up to. But yeah, it is just fun to see him involved with the sport, and put his guys straight into sparring. But yeah, of course, we know the teams now as well. You've got the veterans versus the prospects. Conor has got the prospects for bantamweight and lightweight, whilst Chandler took both of the veterans teams. They also announced all the matchups, because it's like a seeded tournament based on where the coaches rate them. So that's quite interesting. We can take a look at that now. The first round matchup that we got was Roosevelt Roberts versus Nate Jenneman. We'll get into that in a minute. But looking through the rest of the matchups, there's some fun ones on there. Like I said, we'll talk about Roosevelt in a minute. Outside of him, I haven't done a whole lot of research on a lot of the guys that this is off of just people I've seen before. But of course, I'm excited to watch Conor's teammates, Lee Hammond, just an exciting prospect, and Brad Katona, of course, one of the veterans, because he has won Tough before, and I always felt like we didn't really see the most out of him in the UFC, so excited to see him back. Go away. Not you, a pop-up. Everyone seems to be talking about Timur Valiev for good reason. I don't know why he's in this series. The veteran side of it is like, oh, they're getting a second chance and stuff, and it's like Timur Valiev never should have been cut in the first place. He legitimately could be a top 15 ranked fighter with the right opponents. I say the right opponents, not that I mean give him easy opponents. I just think he, obviously I remember him fighting Jack Shaw and stuff like that, and Jack Shaw, obviously, we massively rate the boy Jack, so, but yeah, could probably be considered a top 15, if not just outside of it, so, that feels like a strange one. Jason Knight, I'm excited to see him back. You know that some crazy stuff in the house is going to happen with him involved in the series. And let's talk about Roosevelt Roberts versus Nate Jenneman. Of course, if you haven't seen the first episode, I'm about to ruin the result. So, there you go. There's your warning. Roosevelt Roberts won the fight in like 15 seconds, was it? Maybe 20. I think probably less than 20. Just caught Nate Jenneman on the top of the head and dropped him and landed some hammer fists that it was under 10 seconds. I do apologize. Yeah, I don't know what there is to say about that one. It was a easy finish for Roosevelt Roberts, who I always rated at the start of his UFC career. I remember watching him on Contender Series and seeing him get some finishes in the UFC, and then it just kind of seemed like he hit a bit of a wall that he couldn't get past. I remember he got beat by Jim Miller, I think it was, and then obviously that he got beat in the first round against, I can't remember the guy's name, and then obviously that wheel kick loss to Bahamondes, which was very tough. So I'm excited to see him back. Excited to see him back get a win as well. I do think that he will probably progress into the later stages. Timo Valiev, of course, right there as well. He's bantamweight, isn't he? Never mind. But you know what I mean. I think Roosevelt will get pretty far in this tournament, just because he's got a tricky style, and he was legitimately pretty good in the UFC until he hit that kind of unfortunate streak, which he spoke about in the episode. I don't really know what to say in terms of an overall conclusion. I enjoyed it, but I watched The Ultimate Fighter anyway. There are some fighters that I'm interested in seeing. Couple of names in there that I am excited to watch, so that's always good, and I'm sure Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler will be entertaining. However, I am a little bit disappointed that it does feel like the same old tough, just with a little bit of a extra Conor McGregor paint job over the top, but the prospects versus veterans format is at least something to keep the fights a little bit more interesting, I suppose. What was your thoughts on the first episode of season 31 of The Ultimate Fighter? Who are your picks to go the furthest in the tournament? I'm sure everyone is going to say Timo Valiev, and probably for good reason. And there you go. Thanks for checking out this video. I'll catch you on the next one.